Marcus Johnson sat at his desk in the bustling office of Thompson Engineering, his gaze fixed on the towering skyline outside the window. The sun cast a golden hue over the city, illuminating the architectural marvels he had played a part in designing. A decade of dedication and innovation had led him here, where he was not just an employee, but a respected figure among his peers. His latest project, a sustainable urban development plan, was poised to set new standards in the engineering field. Yet, the thrill of success was overshadowed by an unsettling tension brewing beneath the surface. "Marcus, can you come into the conference room?" Richard Thompson's voice echoed through the office, sharp and commanding. Marcus's stomach tightened slightly. Richard, the firm's president and his direct superior, had been increasingly critical of his work lately, though the project had received accolades from clients and stakeholders. He glanced at his colleagues, who exchanged worried looks before returning to their tasks. Marcus took a deep breath and pushed himself away from his desk, steeling himself for whatever awaited him in the conference room. As he entered, Marcus found Richard standing at the head of the long table, flanked by a few senior engineers. The atmosphere was charged with unspoken words. "Thank you for coming," Richard said, his tone clipped. "Let's discuss the feedback we received on your project." He gestured for Marcus to take a seat, but the invitation felt more like a command. "Of course, Richard," Marcus replied, maintaining his composure. "I'm eager to hear how we can improve." Richard's eyes narrowed slightly as he began to dissect the project's details, pointing out minor flaws that seemed exaggerated in light of the overall success. "I just think we should consider the implications of your design choices more thoroughly. It's not just about innovation. It's about practicality and cost. We can't afford to overlook that," he stated, his voice dripping with condescension. Marcus felt a flicker of frustration. "The cost savings are considerable, Richard. The city is excited about the potential impact." "Excited? Or just naive?" Richard interrupted, his tone sharp. "We need to ensure we're not setting ourselves up for failure." "Your approach is innovative," Marcus finished, his patience thinning. "If we keep playing it safe, we'll never lead the industry. We need to push boundaries." Richard's lips thinned into a tight line. "Boundaries can lead to mistakes. I have to look out for this company, and frankly, I'm not convinced you're up to the task anymore." The room fell silent, the air heavy with tension as Marcus stared at Richard, disbelief washing over him. "Are you questioning my competence?" Marcus asked, incredulity lacing his voice. Richard waved a dismissive hand. "It's not just me, Marcus. Feedback has been mixed. You need to reflect on whether you're still the right fit for our team." The words hung in the air like a dark cloud. Marcus felt the walls closing in on him, his heart racing. He had devoted years to this company, pouring his soul into projects that had redefined urban spaces. "I believe in this work, Richard. I've always delivered results." Richard leaned forward, a predatory glint in his eyes. "Results aren't enough if they come at the cost of the company's reputation. Think carefully about your next steps." The meeting ended, the weight of Richard's words settling heavily on Marcus's shoulders. He returned to his desk, the vibrant city outside now a distant blur. Hours later, as the clock ticked toward the end of the workday, an unexpected envelope landed on his desk. The stark white paper seemed innocuous, but the dread that washed over him was palpable. With trembling hands, he opened it, his breath catching in his throat as he read the termination notice. "Effective immediately. Incompetence in recent projects." The words blurred together, a painful sting of betrayal coursing through him. He couldn't believe what he was reading. Without thinking, he stormed into Richard's office, the door swinging open with an accusatory snap. "This is unacceptable," Marcus exclaimed, his voice a mixture of anger and disbelief. "You can't just terminate me without cause." Richard looked up, feigning surprise. "Marcus, I think you need to take a moment to reflect. This decision is for the best of the company. You've been struggling, and it's in our best interest too." "Struggling? You've undermined my work at every turn. This is about your jealousy, not my competence." Marcus's voice rose, echoing off the walls. Richard's expression hardened. "You need to leave. Now." Marcus felt a surge of despair mingled with rage. He turned on his heel, leaving the office in a daze. As he stepped out into the bustling city, the weight of the world pressed down on him. How had it come to this? Marcus Johnson sat alone in his small apartment, the weight of the termination notice still heavy in his hands. The stark reality of unemployment settled in, and he found himself grappling with an array of emotions: anger, confusion, and a profound sense of betrayal. Outside, the city bustled with life, but inside, he felt isolated, a poignant reminder of the systemic racism that had shadowed his career. The whispers of doubt from Richard Thompson echoed in his mind, and he couldn't shake the feeling that this was not just about a project gone wrong. It was about something deeper. As he turned the termination letter over in his hands, Marcus reflected on the countless hours he had dedicated to his work, the late nights spent perfecting designs, and the innovative ideas that had once earned him praise. Yet, in the blink of an eye, all of that seemed to vanish, replaced by a damning accusation of incompetence. He had encountered challenges before, but this felt different, more sinister. He remembered the meetings where Richard had subtly undermined his contributions, the way his superior's eyes had glinted with jealousy when Marcus presented his successful projects. In search of solace, Marcus decided to attend a support group for professionals of color in the industry. He arrived at the community center, a modest building adorned with colorful murals that represented the diversity of the neighborhood. As he walked in, the room was filled with a blend of voices, stories of triumphs and setbacks, laughter interspersed with sighs of frustration. It felt like a safe haven, a place where he could voice his struggles without fear of judgment. "Welcome. I'm glad you could join us," said a woman named Angela, who led the session. Her warm smile eased some of Marcus's tension. "Tonight, we're sharing our experiences in the workplace, the challenges we face, and how we overcome them." Marcus took a deep breath, feeling the support of those around him. When it was his turn, he recounted his story, the unfair dismissal, the pain of being labeled incompetent, and the feeling of isolation that had followed him. As he spoke, he noticed nods of understanding from the group. "I've been there," said a man named Jamal, his voice steady. "I was let go from a job I loved because they wanted to bring in someone who would fit the mold. It's disheartening, but we have to keep pushing forward." Encouraged by the stories shared, Marcus felt a flicker of determination ignite within him. He realized that he wasn't alone. Many had faced similar battles. The group ended with a collective affirmation, a promise to support one another in their journeys. Inspired by the encouragement he received, Marcus decided to take a leap of faith. He would start his own engineering consultancy. It was a daunting prospect, filled with uncertainty, but the thought of being his own boss and creating a space where diversity and innovation thrived excited him. The initial days were tough. Marcus faced financial hurdles, and the struggle to find clients was daunting. His small home office was cluttered with blueprints and notes, remnants of his dreams taking shape. Each rejection email felt like a blow, but he persisted, fueled by the desire to prove himself. "Marcus, you can do this," he whispered to himself one evening, staring at a blank screen. "You've built projects before. This is just another challenge." Days turned into weeks, and slowly he began to gain traction. His reputation as a reliable consultant started to grow, particularly among those who valued ethical practices and sustainable engineering. He poured his heart into each project, ensuring that his designs weren't just functional, but also environmentally friendly. One afternoon, while reviewing plans for a local community center, Marcus received a call from a potential client. "Hello, Mr. Johnson. This is Sarah from Green City Initiatives. We've heard great things about your work and would love to discuss a project with you." Marcus felt a rush of adrenaline. "Absolutely. I'd love to meet and discuss how we can collaborate." As they spoke, he realized that his vision was aligning with a growing demand for sustainable solutions. The more he engaged with clients, the more he felt his confidence returning. His experiences had forged resilience within him, a determination to rise above the challenges. And with each project he completed, he was not just building structures. He was laying the groundwork for a new chapter in his career, one defined by integrity and innovation. As the sun began to set, casting a warm glow over the bustling city, Thompson Engineering found itself at the center of a storm. The once revered firm was now facing mounting criticism from clients and media alike. Reports of unethical practices and a glaring lack of diversity within the company's workforce were surfacing, and the atmosphere was thick with tension. Employees whispered in corners, their eyes darting nervously, aware that the company's reputation was crumbling like a house of cards. "Have you seen the latest article?" one engineer said to another, his voice low and conspiratorial. "They're saying we don't have a single black engineer on staff. It's embarrassing." "Not just that," the other replied, shaking his head. "Clients are pulling out. I heard that the city is reconsidering the contracts. They want firms that actually represent the community." Meanwhile, across town, Marcus Johnson was on the verge of a breakthrough. His consultancy had gained traction, and he was preparing to present his vision for a sustainable infrastructure project to the city council. Anxiety fluttered in his stomach, but he was determined to seize this opportunity. He spent hours refining his proposal, ensuring that it highlighted innovative designs and ethical practices, elements that Thompson Engineering had neglected. The day of the presentation arrived, and Marcus stood before the city council, a group of stern-faced individuals sitting behind a long table. The room was filled with anticipation as he set up his projector, glancing at the council members. "Thank you for the opportunity to present my vision," Marcus began, his voice steady. "Today, I want to talk about how we can create a sustainable future for our city. It's not just about the engineering. It's about the people who live here." He clicked the remote, and images of green spaces, solar panels, and innovative waste management systems filled the screen. As he spoke passionately about community involvement and environmental responsibility, he noticed nods of approval among the council members. "This is exactly what we need," one member interjected, leaning forward. "Your approach is refreshing. How do you plan to engage with the community?" Marcus smiled, encouraged by the question. "Engagement is key. I propose holding workshops where residents can voice their needs and ideas. We want to build a project that reflects the community's vision, not just our own." When he finished, the room erupted in applause. The council members exchanged impressed glances, and Marcus felt a wave of relief wash over him. He had done it. He had turned his pain into purpose, and now he was being recognized for it. Back at Thompson Engineering, the turmoil continued. Richard Thompson paced in his lavish office, his brow furrowed in frustration. He had received numerous calls from concerned clients, and the media was relentless. He slammed a fist on the table, sending a stack of papers flying. "Why can't you people do your jobs?" he shouted at his team. "We can't afford to lose any more contracts." "Mr. Thompson, we're trying our best," one of his subordinates replied, fear evident in his voice. "But the reports? I don't want to hear about reports. I want solutions." Richard barked, his temper flaring. He could feel the walls closing in around him, and it was suffocating. As Marcus's consultancy thrived, whispers of Richard's unethical practices reached his ears. It was during a casual conversation at a coffee shop that he learned of troubling incidents from former employees. They spoke in hushed tones, sharing stories of corner-cutting and manipulated data to secure contracts. "Did you hear about the project in Riverdale?" a former engineer confided. "They faked the environmental impact assessments just to get the bid. It's all a cover-up." Marcus's heart raced. This was the moment he had been waiting for, proof of the corruption that had led to his dismissal. He couldn't ignore it. He needed to dig deeper. The thought of standing up against Richard and exposing the truth ignited a fire within him. As he left the cafe, determination surged through Marcus. He would not only build his consultancy, but also dismantle the very system that had tried to break him. With each step, he felt more empowered, ready to confront the challenges ahead. The world was changing, and Marcus Johnson was at the forefront of that change. Marcus Johnson sat at his cluttered desk, papers strewn about, as he meticulously organized the evidence he had been gathering against Richard Thompson and Thompson Engineering. The afternoon light streamed through the window, casting long shadows that danced across the room, mirroring the turmoil churning in his mind. He couldn't shake the feeling of betrayal and injustice that had plagued him since the day he was unceremoniously dismissed. But now, determination coursed through his veins like electricity. He was ready to confront his past and uncover the truth. The sound of his phone vibrating on the desk startled him. It was Lisa Chun, the investigative journalist he had reached out to a few days prior. "Marcus, I found some interesting leads regarding Thompson Engineering," she said, her voice filled with excitement. "Can we meet? I think we're onto something big." "Absolutely, Lisa. I have a lot of documents that I think will be useful," he replied, the anticipation of collaboration igniting a spark of hope within him. "Let's meet at the cafe on 5th Street in an hour." As he packed his briefcase with the carefully organized files, Marcus felt a mixture of anxiety and exhilaration. He arrived at the cafe early, finding a quiet corner table where he could lay out his evidence. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee filled the air, providing a comforting backdrop to the storm that had been brewing in his life. When Lisa arrived, her eyes lit up with curiosity as she took a seat across from him. "Show me what you've got," she urged, leaning forward, her notepad ready. Marcus opened his briefcase and spread out the documents. "These are performance reviews from the last 3 years. Notice how Richard's comments became increasingly negative despite my project succeeding." Lisa scanned the pages, her brow furrowing. "This is clear evidence of bias. But it's not just personal. There's more here, isn't there?" "Exactly," Marcus said, pulling out another stack of files. "I've also obtained internal communications that suggest Richard was aware of unethical practices within the company. He even encouraged them to secure contracts." Lisa's eyes widened in disbelief. "This is huge, Marcus. If we can corroborate this with other sources, we might expose the systemic issues at Thompson Engineering." They spent the next couple of hours poring over the documents, piecing together a narrative of corruption that ran deeper than Marcus had initially imagined. The more they uncovered, the clearer it became that Richard wasn't just trying to sabotage Marcus's career. He was part of something much more insidious. "We have to be careful, though," Lisa warned, her tone turning serious. "I've received some anonymous tips warning me to back off from this investigation. Someone is clearly watching us." Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. "What do you mean? Who would threaten you over this?" "I don't know, but it's not uncommon for powerful companies to protect their interests, sometimes through intimidation," she replied. "We need to tread lightly." "Intimidation won't stop me, Lisa," Marcus said firmly, a fire igniting in his chest. "I can't let them continue to operate like this. I won't let Richard get away with what he did to me or to others." Lisa nodded, a sense of respect growing between them. "I admire your courage, Marcus. Let's proceed strategically. We'll gather more evidence and then go public when we're ready." As they wrapped up their meeting, Marcus felt a renewed sense of purpose. He was no longer just a victim. He was a force for change. The drive home was filled with thoughts of potential outcomes and the risks involved. Though he was determined, he couldn't shake the anxiety that accompanied the thought of retaliation from Thompson Engineering. That evening, as he prepared dinner, Marcus's phone buzzed again. It was a text from an unknown number. "Stop your investigation, or you'll regret it." He stared at the message, a sense of dread washing over him. With a deep breath, he replied, "You can't silence me. The truth will come out." Marcus knew the stakes had risen, but the fire in his heart only burned brighter. He would not back down. He would fight for justice, not just for himself, but for all those who had suffered under Richard's corrupt regime. As the sun set, casting an orange glow over the city, Marcus felt a wave of resolve wash over him. He was no longer just an engineer. He was a crusader for integrity in his field. With Lisa by his side, he would uncover the truth, no matter the cost. The day of the press conference arrived, and the atmosphere was charged with anticipation. Marcus Johnson stood at the podium, flanked by journalists and cameras, a determined expression etched on his face. The sunlight streamed through the large windows of the conference hall, illuminating the sea of faces that had gathered to hear his story. He could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on him, but he was ready. "Thank you all for being here today," Marcus began, his voice steady. "I stand before you not just as an engineer, but as a man who has faced injustice and has fought back." He paused, letting his words sink in. The murmurs in the audience quieted as he continued. "Today, I will share the truth about Thompson Engineering and the fraudulent activities that have been allowed to flourish under its roof. As he spoke, Marcus unveiled a series of slides that depicted damning evidence against the company. Each image, each statistic, was a testament to the corruption that had been hidden for too long. These documents show deliberate mismanagement of funds, unethical practices, and a blatant disregard for safety standards. He stated emphatically, his passion igniting the room. Lives are at stake, and this company has prioritized profit over people. A hand shot up from the audience. It was Lisa Chun, the journalist who had joined forces with Marcus during his investigation. "Marcus, can you elaborate on the role Richard Thompson played in these activities?" she asked, her recorder poised to capture every word. Marcus took a deep breath, recalling the many encounters with Richard that had left a bitter taste in his mouth. Richard Thompson, the CEO, not only turned a blind eye to these practices but actively participated in them. He fostered an environment of fear and manipulation to protect his interests. His voice was firm, and he could sense the audience's growing outrage. The press conference erupted into a flurry of questions, each one probing deeper into the scandal. As Marcus answered, he could see the tide turning. Journalists began to exchange glances, realizing the magnitude of the revelations. The once prosperous image of Thompson Engineering was crumbling before their eyes. Meanwhile, back at Thompson Engineering, Richard Thompson watched the live broadcast with a growing sense of panic. His hands trembled as he gripped the edge of his desk, disbelief coursing through him. "This cannot be happening," he shouted, slamming his fist against the polished surface. "That traitor has no idea who he's messing with." His assistant, Sarah, stood at a distance, unsure of how to react. "Sir, perhaps we should consider a statement to counter these claims," she suggested cautiously. Richard scoffed, his mind racing. "Counter? He's painted me as the villain. We need to discredit him now. Release information about his past, something that will make people question his credibility." His eyes gleamed with desperation. He was willing to do anything to save his reputation. As the days unfolded, the public outcry against Thompson Engineering intensified. Reports of the company's unethical practices flooded news outlets, and social media buzzed with outrage. Marcus remained undeterred, his focus unwavering. He had fought too hard to let Richard's attempts to smear his name derail his mission. Finally, a press release from Thompson Engineering hit the newsstands, filled with false accusations about Marcus's past. "This is ridiculous," Marcus exclaimed as he read the statement, his heart pounding. "They're grasping at straws." Lisa, who had been reviewing the document alongside him, shook her head. "Don't let this get to you. Your work speaks for itself, and the community stands behind you. We'll counter this with the truth." As the weeks passed, the pressure mounted on Thompson Engineering. The federal investigation launched against the company sent shockwaves through the industry. Richard's world was collapsing, and he could feel the walls closing in. Board members scrambled to distance themselves, issuing statements of concern and regret, but it was too late. In a meeting with the board, Richard's facade began to crack. "You can't possibly believe this is all my fault," he argued, desperation creeping into his voice. "I built this company." One of the board members, a woman named Clara, leaned forward, her expression stern. "Richard, we can no longer support your leadership. The evidence is overwhelming. You put us all at risk." The atmosphere was thick with tension, and Richard knew his time was running out. "I will not resign," he spat defiantly, but deep down, he felt the weight of his impending downfall. As the scandal continued to unfold, Marcus's determination grew stronger. He had transformed his pain into purpose, and the world was beginning to take notice. The fight for justice was far from over, but he was ready to see it through, no matter the cost. As the sun began to rise over the bustling city, Marcus Johnson stood at the podium, the bright lights of the National Engineering Conference illuminating the stage. His heart raced as he glanced at the sea of faces before him. Young engineers, seasoned professionals, and students eager to learn. The journey that had led him here was fraught with challenges, but today, he was ready to share his story. "Good morning, everyone," Marcus began, his voice steady despite the weight of his emotions. "Today, I want to talk about resilience, ethics, and the power we have as engineers to create change." He paused, allowing his words to sink in, I was once at the pinnacle of my career, respected and recognized for my work, only to face an unjust dismissal that left me questioning everything I believed about this industry. A murmur of empathy rippled through the audience. Marcus could feel their engagement, their understanding. I was accused of incompetence by someone who felt threatened by my success. Richard Thompson, my former boss, sought to cover up his own failures by using me as a scapegoat. He took a deep breath, recalling the hurt and betrayal that had once consumed him. But instead of allowing that moment to define me, I chose to rise from the ashes. As he spoke, Marcus could see nods of agreement and encouragement from the crowd. In the face of adversity, I found strength in the community I built around me. Other professionals of color who had faced similar struggles. We supported one another and shared strategies for overcoming systemic barriers in our field. With each word, Marcus painted a picture of his transformation, from a devastated employee to a successful entrepreneur. I founded my own engineering consultancy, focusing on sustainable practices and ethical integrity. And while the road was not easy, it was filled with lessons that shaped me into the leader I am today. He glanced at the audience, searching for connection. I want you to remember that our journeys may be different, but the core values of integrity and hard work will always guide us through the darkest times. As he finished his speech, the room erupted into applause, resonating with admiration for the man who had turned his pain into purpose. Marcus stepped down from the podium, a sense of fulfillment washing over him. He had not just told his story, he had inspired others to confront their own challenges. Later that evening, while mingling with fellow engineers, Marcus was approached by a young woman with bright eyes and an eager smile. "Mr. Johnson, your story is incredible. I'm just starting my career, and I can't tell you how much it means to hear someone like you talk about resilience in the face of such adversity." "Thank you," Marcus replied, genuinely touched. "Remember, it's not just about overcoming obstacles. It's about how we choose to use our experiences to uplift others." As the conference concluded, news began to circulate regarding Richard Thompson. Reports had emerged revealing his involvement in a larger scheme of embezzlement and unethical practices at Thompson Engineering. The investigation that had begun with Marcus's expose had uncovered a web of corruption that extended far beyond the accusations made against him. Marcus watched as journalists swarmed outside the conference hall, cameras flashing and microphones thrust forward, eager to capture every detail. Richard was now the center of a scandal that had tarnished not just his career, but threatened the very foundation of the engineering firm he once led. In the days that followed, the legal consequences for Richard came swiftly. Charges of fraud and embezzlement were filed, and he was forced to step down as the company's CEO. Marcus felt a mix of emotions: relief that justice was being served, but also a profound sadness for the man who had once been a mentor turned adversary. As he sat in his office, reflecting on the whirlwind of events, Marcus felt a sense of closure wash over him. He had not only rebuilt his life, but had also become a beacon of hope for those who had faced similar injustices. His consultancy flourished, gaining respect and recognition in the industry for its commitment to ethical practices and innovative engineering solutions. Marcus, can you believe the headlines? Lisa Chun, the journalist who had assisted him in the investigation, exclaimed as she entered his office. "You've not only exposed the truth, but also sparked a much-needed conversation about ethics in our field." "Yes, it's incredible," Marcus replied, a smile breaking across his face. "It's a reminder that integrity is our greatest asset. We must continue to advocate for transparency and accountability in our industry." As he looked out the window at the sprawling city, Marcus felt a renewed sense of purpose. His journey had been long and arduous, but he had emerged stronger, proving that resilience, integrity, and a commitment to justice could triumph over even the darkest challenges.